Okay, so the class is being recorded. A very good morning to you. My name is Dr. Dr.Galil, and this is EA300B, Children's Literature 2. And what is it that we're doing? We're finishing off The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and we're moving on to Voices in the Park. I'm hopeful that you find the journey so far interesting. Spoke a lot about the tale of Peter Rabbit. We spoke a lot and long about what picture books are and the evolution of children's literature and picture books and how people used to think of it and not it was not regarded or given its due in terms of appreciation and respect, but over time it started to gather momentum and people started to change their minds and their mindsets about children's literature when they started to think of it as also something worthy of consideration for adult readership. Spoke about that. We spoke about the idea of picture books and how picture books are different in terms of how we approach and read them because of the this kind of dynamics and interplay between the picture and the text. We're no longer focusing on the text, and by text, of course, we mean the word, the phrase, the sentence, and the paragraph, and everything in between. We're now equally focused on the picture because without the picture, you can't really um, get to the bottom of things. You can't really say with authority that you have done the maximum reading there is in terms of interpretation. You have to go back to the picture because lots of things are unsaid in the text part. You need to look for clues. You need to kind of go to the picture so that you can fill in the gaps that the text is filled with. Um, and then we moved on and we focused more on a representative picture book, which was The Tale of Peter Rabbit. The Tale of Peter Rabbit is a typical picture book. It was written and published in the early 20th century, which makes it a modern picture. But it also has those postmodern picture books flavor to it, in the sense that you have the idea of play, you have the idea of not direct intertextuality, but intertextuality when it comes to your interpretation. If you think of Peter, for example, and his character as archetypal, representing archetypes like Adam and Eve and their fall, when they fell out of grace because of what they did, the infringements and the transgression that they did against the dictates of God. If you would like to read much into it, if you're going to lower the bar a little bit and think of it in terms of some kind of childhood curiosity that we normally associate kids with, that's fine too. So again, you have multiplicity of interpretations, and it depends on who you are, what background you bring to the conversation and to the interpretation. So we're continuing with this effort today. We're finishing off The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and then we'll move on to Voices in the Park, which is another picture book, though a postmodern one because it was perhaps written in the 80s or the early 90s. We'll check that when the time is right. So before I proceed, if you guys have any questions, on and about the picture book genre in general, on and about the Tale of Peter Rabbit specifically. Yeah, go ahead, yeah, Leanne.
Actually, I have no question, but the story about voices in the park, it's it's a bit strange for me because it is my first time to hear and read about read a story about gorillas that take care of dogs. يعني another species of animal take care of
Mm.
another species of animal.
You mean there is obviously a lot that we don't know about the animal world, I promise you. But to have the writer or the author, I mean, combine them. Remember that gorillas are not gorillas in the picture book. They represent human beings. That this is a highly anthropomorphic piece of work where gorillas were created to stand for human beings for reasons that we're going to mention perhaps today or next time when we delve deep into voices in the park. But that's a good point that you're making, the idea that you have animals taking care of other animals, even taking them as pets. We'll talk about this and more as we proceed, yeah, Layan, I promise you. Any other nice observations about picture books in general, about the Tale of Peter Rabbit? Anyone and everyone? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so basically, the Tale of Peter Rabbit is, in terms of form, it's a picture book, which means that it's not a mainstream. No, it's not a novel in the sense that the focus normally with novels is on the text and the nuances that the text brings. I mean, you focus on the style of the writer, how the writer used the words, and how he or she manipulates them to reach a certain effect. This time around, it's not only the text that we're focused on, obviously, we're focused on the picture. The picture is an equal partner, and to say the least. Again, the enjoyment and also the meaning is not full unless and until you look deeply at the pictures and you try to decipher them. You try to figure out what is it that the writer meant when he drew the character in a certain way, when he had those characters dressed in a certain way or even undressed in a certain way and in certain situations where those characters are presented on the page. Are they close up or are they on the ground? Are they meeting our angle of vision from which we're looking at the picture? Are they distant? So all those considerations count when it comes to relating the picture to the text, and then you come up with meaning. And it's only then that the meaning is complete, if it has ever been complete. And remember that the meaning in modern and in postmodern literature is not fixed. It gets moving and it gets changed depending on your background, depends on what you bring to the conversation. Um, so we also spoke about the themes and the ideas that the Tale of Peter Rabbit and is concerned, and we focused, if you still remember, on this idea of growth and maturity and the fact that the Peter that we meet at the end of the picture book is totally different from the Peter that we started with. It is true that in the two ends, we have the rebellious Peter. Uh, he still remains, he remains rebellious at the end, but perhaps at the end he learned his lesson, and the lesson also is up for grabs. You may say that this is um, what he did was kind of violation of rules, breaking of certain rules and guidelines, and he shouldn't have done that. And that's why he is suffering the consequences at the end. And you may think of him as a liberator, as a freedom fighter, as a somebody who kind of goes against authority of all sorts, because those authority, yani, kinds and forms of authority are not doing what they are supposed to do. Um, so it depends on your perspective, it depends on your angle of vision. Now part of what informs the conversation when it comes to the tail of Peter Rabbit would be the critical essays and the critical articles that we have seen and gone through. And I'm stressing the fact that you need to also read them on your own, because they inform the conversation. They take the conversation about the tail of Peter Rabbit to different directions, and they may seem divergent at the beginning, but they come together at the end, and they form a part of the totality that we're looking for when it comes to reading a piece of work. The fact that when you read the articles and when you assimilate and process them very well, you come up with a whole vision and a whole assessment of the whole experience. And this is obviously what we're after eventually. I don't know whether you have started or perhaps you have finished reading the articles or not. If you have read the articles, raise your hand. You haven't, because, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Y-
Leanne,
Do you mean that is in Blue Book?
I don't know
Other
what color the book is, but we have a number of articles, and I have given you those articles on the shared folder that you now know and frequent and go to. Yeah, whether they go under the blue book or not, yeah, this is obviously irrelevant. This is not what I mean. I mean that we have a number of articles, and you have to go through them for a full meaning and a full understanding. So, did you read any secondary sources, critical
yes,
material? Yeah, okay. I think we have names. We have Scott. We have other people who focus on the form, on the picture book in general.
Mackie.
And we have people who are more focused on the tale of Peter Rabbit. Do you remember any of those titles? I'm asking everyone, obviously.
Mackie. There is an author, the first author, Mackie,
Okay.
and well, Sharon Goodman. He's
Mm-hmm.
he talks about the introduction. يعني there was an introduction, and the author Sharon Goodman,
Mm-hmm.
and and Aesop. I Aesop.
Yeah, this is Aesop. You mean this is the title of another article, right? Aesop in the
Yeah,
shadows. Yes. Yeah. He or she was trying to trace this idea of anthropomorphism, right? And the idea that fable started way back in ancient Greece with a very famous fabulist who is or who was Aesop. Yeah, that's good. And there was this talk also about fables, and the fact that the tale of Peter Rabbit is a fable. A fable is Normally, a story where animals are featured and they are given human qualities and attributes, and they are dealt with as human beings. This is called anthropomorphism, and the Tale of Peter Rabbit falls under this category or under this genre, without morals, without this moral lesson, because lots of critics are against this moral lesson thing. They believe that Beatrice Potter didn't have an instructional agenda in mind. She did what she did because remember when she started writing it, it was meant as a gift for one of the sons of her children, of her friends. She didn't give it much thought in terms of instructions. Normally, when we talk about works of art, we talk about delight and instruction. Obviously, the delight part is there, where she wanted to delight the child. She wanted to make him happy by those very interesting and engaging drawings, but she didn't have this instructional aspect or part in mind. She didn't want to give a lesson or a moral lesson. Again, we can also, because we bring, you know, our background, our education, and our um, readings into or to the work, we can think of moral for the story, because this is what we're used to. We're used to the idea that there has to be a moral that we can take away from the story. So we impose lessons on the world. But if you ask me, and if you ask Beatrice Potter, I think she would decline and say, no, I was doing it for its amusement part. I wanted to make this child happy, and full stop. So this is one of the engagements, and this is one of the articles. Like I said, we also have articles on the form, on the integration and the harmony between the picture and the text itself. I think I have notes that I would like to share with you. Let's perhaps read them and see how things will turn out. Let me try to share them. Yes. So again, in this picture book part of the course, we're focusing on words and pictures. And we're focused on the idea that it is true that picture books are primarily meant for children, but there is obviously no harm in them also addressing the sensitivities and only engaging and also engaging adult readers. And here is a very interesting definition by Barbara Bader about what a picture book is. She's saying that a picture book is a text, illustrations, total design. It is also an item of manufacture and a commercial product. It can be a social, cultural, and historical document, but above all else, it is an experience for the child or for a child. And she stresses the fact that this art form hinges on the interdependence of pictures and what she's stressing the fact that the picture, perhaps for the first time, goes along with the words. You cannot really understand the words unless you also focus on the pictures. She stresses this simultaneous display of two facing pages, where on one side you have the words, and on the other um, you have the images and the pictures, and you also have this drama, and you have this kind of symmetry and harmony between the two. So again, the focus is also on how those picture books are designed to be real experiences for children. Again, there was or there is this debate fomenting and being engaged in as we speak, and it is about the appeal that some picture books may find among adults. And obviously, lots of scholars are not denying adults this. They say that a picture book can also address the impulses, the fancies of adults as well. Especially when we talk about those elements and characteristics that we see in postmodern literature in general, the idea of intertextuality, wordplay, transgression, irony, role reversals, and destabilizations. These are core elements that we see in the literature in the postmodern times, and we see some of them even in the tale of Peter Rabbit, in spite of the fact that Peter Rabbit does not belong to the postmodern times. For example, the idea of transgression is there. Transgression means that you go against something, you break a rule, you challenge an authority or established certain established orders. And this is happening on a very grand scale in the tale of Peter Rabbit, where obviously Peter Rabbit is challenging the authority of his mom, who represents the authority of parents. He is also challenging the authority of human beings because he is obviously an animal. He is also challenging the authority of who rules, who is monopolizing the airwaves, and obviously it's the human being as given in the character of Mr. Mac Kruger. So transgression is there, which is, like I said, something that adult readers find very appealing. Um, yeah, there is a great deal of irony, and irony does not mean, funny situations as much as it means situations where perhaps the roles are turned, um, and the tables are turned. You have characters behaving perhaps against their nature, and sometimes they work in accordance with their nature. You have wordplay, uh, and you have this idea of destabilization where whatever you think happens does not happen, and whatever you think does not happen. So again, it's all about pushing the boundaries of the traditional picture book, which is happening on a small scale in the tale of Peter Rabbit and on a large scale in Voices in the Park. Again, the focus in children's literature in general and on in picture books specifically is on this integration and this harmony that the writer create between the story and the picture in order to create a vital and a thrilling imagination, which every child or adult look forward to. So children and adults are allied in their engagement with the imagination and welcoming the imagination to be part of their experience in general. Um, so, and Beatrice Potter was very successful in that, in having this marriage between the the picture and the word. And that's perhaps part of why she is very popular among readers, whether those readers are children or adults. So again, the focus is on the tale of Peter Rabbit, which has influenced children's and generations of children, across the ages and down through the age, where you have this imaginary world of animals, animated and humanized, and it is very clear that you don't have this division between the both worlds, the world of the imagination and reality, the world of the picture and the world of the text, in that in any child's mind. Again, the tale of Peter Rabbit focuses on this perfect marriage of the word and the image. It is, in the description of one of the critics, a triumph of fantasy and fact. And we have scholars butting in and contributing input about what the Tale of Peter Rabbit is and what stands for, and what is it that Beatrice Potter had in mind when she wrote it and she drew the pictures in it. For example, Carol Scott um, spoke about this idea of rebellion. She spoke about the fact that Peter Rabbit, however little he is, he is also um, given or portrayed in a state of plight and in a state of crisis. And the illustrations are drawn in a way that would allow us to sympathize and empathize with him. So the illustrations are presented from his low to the ground view, featuring Peter in close up and within touching distance. This is, of course, in contrast with how Mr. McGruger is presented. Mr. McGruger is presented and portrayed as being distant from the reader. He's always depicted on the far side of Peter. And again, this is meant for us as readers to kind of identify with Peter and perhaps feel antagonistic and against or towards Mr. McCrook. So this identification dramatically instills fear and tension in the reader, um, and obviously instills fear and tension because of the amount of passion and the amount of sympathy that we now have for Peter, because he is presented as such close up, very near us. I mean, aligning with our angle of vision, while Mac Kruger is presented as evil, as an enemy, not only to Peter, but an enemy for us. That's why he's presented as distant. Sometimes you would feel that there is this sense of contradiction in terms of the effect that she's aiming at. Again, because she's for the most part neutral, because for the most part uh, not aggressive enough in communicating what she has in mind. And this is, if you ask me, is better than being too involved in the narrative, being very clear and sticking labels to the characters, kind of classifying them. That this is indirect literature, and the indirect literature is way better than immediate uh, and involved literature. Sometimes and this is perhaps stresses the need for the picture. Sometimes when you read the narrative, um, unless it is coupled with the picture, there is a great deal that you miss. And some of the situations would be how Peter is drawn in the middle, drawn verbally through words in the middle of this crisis when he is under the garden and there is a sieve over his head. The verbal narrative presents the murderous intent of Matt Kruger as a matter of fact, everyday occurrence, while the illustration presents the desperate moment from the terrified view of a small animal who is or which is about to die. A view that is reinforced by the birds that take flight to the left and the right. It is a very intense moment. It's a very, you know, decisive moment in the life of Peter and perhaps the other animals and birds, but the way it is presented in words is makes it random, makes it casual, makes it not important because obviously this is what Matt Kruger does on perhaps a weekly basis or a daily basis. The fact that in a very matter of fact way he kills animals and goes scot-free. Nobody asks any questions. So when you look at the picture, the scene gets intensified, it gets more scary than you could have ever expected. So again, you may feel that there is this level of inconsistency, but it doesn't last long. Again, what perhaps gives us this sense of contradiction would be the idea that we focus more on the text, which is what we're used to, but not anymore. In order for you to fill in the gaps, in order for you to figure out what really happens with all the nuances, you need to go and look at the pictures and try to glean out the truth with all, again, the intricacies of the situation and its nuances. Again, the focus is on how big Mr. Matt Kruger is presented and how small Peter is. So of course, we have this tendency to kind of have our loyalties and sympathies with whatever is small, whatever we feel is deserving of our solidarity in situations where you have um, small people, for example, and big ones. The big one may be um, right and correct in his attitudes, but we still feel that we need to perhaps feel more sympathetic towards whoever and whatever is small. So without his clothes, Peter is only a small wild animal. Uh, um, and his tears, his emotions, and his human posture intensify the reader's identification with him. So as you can see here, verbal narrative and illustration work together in harmony rather than in disharmony. Again, there is also this talk about the fact that Potter is subverting her age's expectations in terms of the ideas and also in terms of the genre in general. In terms of values, this is actually what we said last time. We said that the picture book subverts some of the values of the Victorian age, the idea of obedience, the fact that as a child you have to be obedient to your parents. As a citizen and as a good citizen, you have to be obedient to the authorities. there is an established order that you need to honor and respect and never challenge. So she, whether she meant it or not, is challenging and is subverting those values. In terms of genre, we also have this subversion of the genre, where in normal circumstances you would have the hero as presented as young, objective, rational, resourceful, white, male, and normally this traditional boy or child who is obviously white and resourceful and everything and rational and everything in between leaves the civilized world to brave obstacles and opponents in the wilderness. And once his goal is achieved, he returns home uh, to grateful welcome and rewards. Is this happening with Peter? No, Peter is not presented as a human being in the first place. He is not presented as a rational um, hero. He is presented, he doesn't have any of the qualities and the characteristics of the traditional white, young, resourceful hero that we're used to. Peter is quite unlike the traditional hero because he is small, emotionally driven, easily frightened, and a not very rational animal. That's why we have this idea that that Peter and his tail and Potter and her tail have encouraged many generations of children to self-indulgence, disobedience, transgression of social boundaries and ethics, um, and assertion of their wild, unpredictable nature against the constrictions of civilized living. We have another angle of vision that Maria Nikoljeva and Carol Scott are looking at Peter from. They explore the dynamic relationship between the word and image. Again, uh, um, they look at the picture books as specific mediums or genres in literature and culture that prepare children for other media of communication. In their view, the authors develop specific theories, terminology, and working tools for discussing the picture form. And whether we're talking about the authors who write picture books because they expect children to move on and deal with mainstream novels or children's literature novels later. There is always this talk about the distinction between between illustrated books and picture books. With illustrated books, the picture complements the text, while with picture books, the picture comes first. The pictures come first, but in reality, the two often, overlap, and words and picture cast a combined spell. The relationship is subtle, and the role of the artist varies. I hope things are clear or getting more or clearer as we move on. We have another article. It's the picture books, the art of visual storytelling, where you have Martin Salisbury, the illustrator, and we also have more styles. And they trace the fascinating evolution of the picture book as a storytelling medium and as a cultural agent. They delve deep into the future to see where the medium might be going next. And they have case studies and they address seminal works and they survey artistic techniques and they also peek inside the sketchbooks and creative process of prominent illustrating, adding dimension to this thoughtful and visually engrossing journey. And this is the end of it. What we're going to do now is we're going to break for 10 minutes, and when we come back, we're going to start Voices in the Park. I'll give you perhaps 5 more minutes before we break, and I would like you during those 5 minutes to perhaps reflect on the whole the Tale of Peter Rabbit experience, and if you have questions, come forward with them. You guys have 5 minutes from now to come to the mic and share whatever you feel about picture books in general and the Tale of Peter Rabbit specifically. Yeah, Zuhur.
Yeah, doctor, I think pictures give more meaning to the story. It adds more, im- uh, like more joy and more understanding.
Yes. Yeah, it can work both ways. It can, of course, give you pleasure because pictures are normally nice to look at, and they also give more meaning, like Zuhur is saying. Yeah, you're correct. I quite agree, Zuhur. Thank you. Hmm. Any questions?
Doctor,
Yeah, go ahead.
in addition, in addition what in addition to what Zuhur said, yeah, يعني, because one of the relationships between images and words, it's complementary, because sometimes um, the image is some images are stronger than words, as the images can convey a message that words could not convey it.
Yes.
A complementary relationship, and the other two relationships parallel and contradictory.
Yes. For the most part, they complement each other. Sometimes the text stays silent on certain things. You cannot really know the feelings and the emotions behind whatever is said, and it's only when you look at the corresponding picture that things clear out and become obvious. Yeah, it's they complement each other. It is true, and the picture this time around is sometimes more telling and more suggestive and more revealing than the text itself. Yeah, you're correct, Yala, and thank you so much for this very interesting insight.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording because this is the end of the Tale of Peter Rabbit, and then when we come back, we start a new recording, which would mark the beginning of our discussions of the second picture book, which is Voices in the Park. Let me stop the recording now. Recording stopped.